Hello and welcome back to Hearthstone. My name's Lumin and right now it's time for some more Naxxramas goodness. In this video we're going to be having a look at all the thus far revealed by Blizzard cards. I say revealed by Blizzard because there were a couple of leaked cards. Like there were a couple of screenshots of the client that showed off some of the encounters, some of the other cards that we hadn't seen yet, and so on and so forth. Not talking about those here. Right now we're talking about the class cards that were revealed and the neutral cards. Now the big mechanic being used in Curse of Naxxramas is Death Rattle. We know what Death Rattle is, it's been in the game for a long time. It's apparently been reworked a little bit come Curse of Naxxramas. Basically just the order in which Death Rattles happen, but you'll see that most of the cards either have a Death Rattle or they have something that will in some way affect a Death Rattle. So when we do start playing come Curse of Naxxramas, be it in Arena, Casual, Ranked, or through the single player adventure, we're going to be seeing a lot of Death Rattle, and we should probably prepare accordingly. That said, however, let's jump in, have a look at the cards, and just talk about them a little bit. We're starting with a Hunter card, the Web Spinner. This one costs 1 mana, and it's a 1/1 beast. Death Rattle, draw a random beast card. This is actually one of my favorites. I don't know, I just think it's really cool. It's kind of like the Captain's Parrot, the pirate card, but just, you know, for beasts and for hunters exclusively. And I would say kind of useful, because 1 for a 1/1's already really good. It gives you like a lot of synergy possibility. You could play a buzzard in this. You could play this, charge it into something if you've got the Tundra Rhino out. There's just a lot you can do with it, and I honestly think that this will be in most hunter decks, just because they do have, for the most part, just beasts in them, and being able to draw a random beast card is a big deal. It's great. It's really, really good. And the most important part, it just costs 1 mana. That is, in my opinion, the most important part. So, great card. I like it. Next we have the Dark Cultist for the Priest. This is probably my favorite of the lot, just because I'm super excited for Priest come Curse of Naxxramas. It's going to be so much fun. Seriously. Now this is a 3-cost, 3/4 minion. Okay, that's already really, really good. And its Death Rattle is give a friendly minion plus 3 health. So that 3 health will be randomly placed on a friendly minion. You can't actually choose where it's going to go, which is kind of sad. I mean, it would be great if you could choose, but it's not often that you have more than just 2 or 3 minions out. If you do, then you're in such a vast or strong lead that it wouldn't really matter anyway. But I think it's absolutely amazing. I think it's super good, because if you consider that you are actually getting, for 3 mana, a 3/7 in terms of value. You get in that 3 extra life once this minion dies. Sure, it has to actually die for you to get it, but still, you will get it eventually, unless it gets silenced or whatever. But that's something you can say for all the Death Rattle minions. Still, I think it's really good, and I think that it's going to fill a nice gap in the Priest's, let's just say, arsenal that's been sorely lacking. You know, a kind of cheap, high power minion with nothing but good going for it. Because some of the Death Rattles, especially on these stronger minions, are kind of negative, or kind of somewhere in between. This one is straight up positive. Even if you just play the 3/4 for 3 mana, it's great. Nothing bad about that. That's why I like this card the most. It's good. Next we have the Void Caller. This is the Warlock card. 4 mana for a 3/4 demon. That's kind of good. You know, 4 health is pretty decent. I think it's nice that it's out of the 3 health range. It's kind of important. And this is, for those wondering, or, you know, I doubt any of you are really wondering, but it's the old Voidwalker artwork. This was actually on the Voidwalker before the other one was on it. I don't know if they had a plan, if they thought this was going to be the Voidcaller right from the start, but whatever. There it is. 4 mana, 3/4 minion. Death Rattle is put a demon from your hand into the battlefield, and immediately I can say that stats-wise, for the cost, not as good as the Dark Cultist, but the Death Rattle is just much better. Also, it is worth noting that right now, Warlocks don't use that many demons. So this is obviously a push by Blizzard to get them to use more demons. Same goes for, say for instance, the Web Spinner and Hunters. You know, they must use more beasts. Although, I don't think a Hunter right now at least, has a problem using more beasts. There are always many good beast cards, but the same can't be said for just demons. Regardless, it's a really good death rattle because it'll put that minion for free from your hand into play. And what makes me a little bit sad is that you will then lose the on-play effects. So if you play this and say you pass your turn, someone kills it in their turn, obviously the minion will then be summoned and the battle cry shouldn't actually activate. I'm not sure if they changed something with that system, but it will work in kind of the same way that Mind Games works right now, where you'll summon the minion and it'll just sort of appear there. That's going to be that. I don't know. I don't know if they changed it for this specifically. I think that would be a little bit unfair, and obviously, if you think about it, in some ways it could be better, because if it summons a Flame Imp, a Doom God, that damage won't be done to your hero. If you summon a... Doom Guards are actually the ones that drop 2 cards. I'm thinking of Pit Lords. But you know what I'm saying. It won't have the negative attached to it, but it also won't have the positive. I do, however, think for Warlocks, there's more negative than positive with summoning them. So, you know, that makes the card much more useful. It's a good card. I'm not a huge Warlock fan, but this is going to help them out quite a bit. It won't help a Zulok deck out very much, but it'll help any other deck out. I guess you guys can just let me know what you think about that. Now we're going to move on to Duplicate. This is the Mage card, and it's a secret. So it's obviously 3 mana, there are no stats on it or anything like that. When a friendly minion dies, put 2 copies of it into your hand. I really like this. Okay, I think it's absolutely amazing for a secret deck where you don't really want that many minions, but you want the ones that you have more. You want more of them. You know, you want more Kirin Mages, you want more Ethereal Arcanists, you want more Legendaries. I mean, think about the possibilities with Legendaries. If a Leroy Jenkins dies, you'll get 2 of them back in your hand. If a Deathwing dies, you'll get 2 of them back in your hand. Obviously, you're going to have to play them again. That's going to cost you quite a bit. That's why I brought up the cheaper one. If you think about using something like Blood Mage Thalnos, which I think would probably fit in quite a few of the mage decks out there at the moment, then you could play him, get 2 back in your hand, play those 2. Oh, what? You know, so much spell power, card draw, so much value. It's just really good. And this obviously, once again, as with all the other cards, just synergizes well with Death Rattle, because when you do have that happen, like I mentioned with Blood Mage Thalnos, you will have the Death Rattle proc in, then 2 copies of that minion will be put in your hand, then you'll be able to play them both, have the Death Rattles again. It's ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. And it's another secret to be annoyed by. Now we're moving on to the Shaman card. This is Reincarnate. It's a spell that costs 2 mana, and it reads, destroy a minion, then return it to life with full health. So this is, once again, just a Death Rattle procer extraordinaire. It's also kind of great that it brings it back to life with full health. It's amazing. So if you use it on anything with Death Rattle, it will kill the minion, trigger the Death Rattle, bring it back to life, it'll be full up, and you could probably just use it again. Now, you can also use this on your opponent's minions, which I think is kind of cool because there are uses that you wouldn't think of immediately. So if an opponent buffs a minion up a whole lot with a bunch of random spells, or say for instance a Death Cultist puts 3 extra life on one of your opponent's minions, you can kill that minion. The 3 life will be gone, it'll come back to life with whatever it had before. That's kind of cool. Okay, so it's multi-purpose, but given that most people are going to be using the Naxxramas cards come the expansion, given that we're going to be seeing a lot of Death Rattle, I think that this will probably be used on friendly minions just as much as opposing minions. But it scares me a little that it's 2 mana to do something like this. So it obviously counters some of the Naxxramas cards that are coming out as well. You'll see, you know, for some of the negative Death Rattles. So, for instance, if your opponent has a Death Rattle that does something positive for you, you can use this on their card to kill it, and then kill it again to get that positive effect twice. It's good. It's real good. And I want to say it's what Shamans needed, but I think that Shamans have a ton of removal already, and I just don't know. It's going to be frustrating to play against, but whatever. Now, Death's Bite. the warrior card. This is a weapon. I was kind of shocked to see a weapon, and happy, okay, but a little bit shocked. This pretty much puts warrior far ahead as the weapon wielding class of choice. You know, it had more before, more than rogue, but now it's just got much more, and this is an amazingly good weapon. So it's 4 mana for a 4/2 weapon, which means it's got 2 durability. You can attack with it twice before it expires. When it expires, it deals 1 damage to all minions. All minions, so it's a built-in whirlwind. It's kind of expensive sitting at 4 mana, but it is 4/2. And I think the fact that it's 4 is very important, seeing that warrior now has 2, 3, 4, and 5 covered with just weapons. That's ridiculous. You got the Arathi Weaponsmith's weapon at 2. You got the Fiery Warx at 3, you got this at 4, and you got Arcanite Reaper at 5. Then there's obviously 7 as well with Gorehowl. Now they just need a 6. Warriors just need a 6. The Death Rattle is going to be synergizing so well with warrior stuff. Just imagine this in the Kolmot Tempo deck. It would be great. You got so many things that need to be triggered. Think about, you know, the Acolytes of Pain, the Amani Berserkers. You could throw some other Enraging minions in there, like the Raging Worgen or whatever. It's just really cool. It's also nice against decks like the Zoo Warlock or the Shockedon or whatever, the slightly more aggro decks. It'll be nice to keep you alive. It's a good weapon all around. I think all warriors will probably be using this. Well, most warriors will probably be using this. I like it. Next, we've got another secret. This one for Paladins called Avenge. It costs 1 mana, as all the other Paladin secrets do. And when one of your minions dies, give a friendly minion +3, +2. That is a huge buff for 1 mana. And now, it's interesting how it works, because it's just when one of your minions dies. Doesn't matter which one, doesn't matter how they die, whatever. When one of them dies, you give a other friendly minion +3, +2. It's good. It's very good. And I think it'll also just once again synergize well with a lot of the cards already in the Paladin arsenal and a lot of the other Naxxramas cards. I mean, we're going to be looking at some of the neutral cards at the end after we looked at the class cards, and you will see that all of them will just work so good with the class cards. You're getting 3/2 for 1 mana. Obviously there is the uncertainty, because it's once again a random friendly minion, but I don't think it really matters. You know, it could go on any minion, it would probably be good. So there. Next, Poison Seeds for Druid. This is a spell, and it destroys all minions and summons 2/2 treants to replace them. That's crazy. Now, this does definitely work with Death Rattle. So if you destroy all the minions on the board, it'll trigger all their Death Rattles, and then it'll summon those 2/2s in their places. But if the Death Rattle is something that summons another minion, it'll summon that as well. For instance, there is, which we're going to be looking at in just a second, a Nerubian Egg that has a Death Rattle that summons a 4/4 Nerubian. So if you cast that with a Nerubian Egg out on the field, it will in fact summon the 2/2 Treant and the 4/4 Nerubian. That's great. That is incredibly good. And I would say Druids needed more removal, but this is obviously a little more situational. You can't always just use this. You gotta be sure. Obviously replacing something like a Ragnaros or a Sylvanas or what the heck ever, any big legendary with a 2/2 is a good deal. But in some cases, this just won't be useful. It is, however, a board clear. It's something that Druids needed. Let me know what you think about it. And next up, we've got the Anub-R Ambusher. This is the Rogue card, and it's the final class card we're having a look at before moving on to the next ones. This is a 4 mana card. That's a 5/5, and its Death Rattle is return a friendly minion to your hand. That's very interesting. Then there's just the fact that it's a 5/5 for 4 mana. That's very ridiculous. The Death Rattle, however, can be both good and bad. Now, with rogues, there's already so much bouncing happening. I mean, the first thing that comes to mind is just Leroy Jenkins, Shadow Step, Leroy Jenkins, Shadow Step, Leroy Jenkins. Cold blood, dead. Hate that. I hate that. It happens so much to me. I don't know how it happens so much to me, but it happens so much to me. That's like 30 hit points gone in one go, in one fell swoop. So we're going to see more of that. We're going to see things like SI7 agents bouncing up and down the whole time. We're going to see all the combo cards working better. I think it's going to make Rogue a lot more technical to play, but when people learn to use these things really well, it's going to be ridiculous. As a priest, I see 5 attack and I'm happy. Gives me something to use my Shadow of Death on. It also gives your opponent, if you are playing as the rogue playing this card, a chance to have a choice in how things will play out. I mean, sometimes it won't be good for you to return things to your hand, but sometimes it will be. Regardless, there you have it. I would have to say that this is probably my least favorite of the cards that have been revealed. Of all the class cards, at least. I don't know. It just isn't looking quite as fun or as useful as the others, but I'm 100% sure it's going to be super annoying and super effective in good rogue players' hands. So next up, we're moving on to the neutrals, the cards that we will all gain access to no matter which class, and these are only some of them. Okay, there are many more. These are only some of them. We're starting with Dancing Swords. This is a 3 mana 4/4, and its death rattle is your opponent draws a card. This is a 4/4. Okay, it sucks. I'm a priest player. 4/4s suck. I think a lot of people are going to be playing this, but the death rattle is definitely a big negative, and I think that as a priest, this is something that I definitely consider putting in my deck, because, you know, we can run Silence, you can run Mass Dispel, you can run things that'll make this much more useful for you, but it is a 4/4 for 3. And if you're playing a hardcore rushy deck, then you wouldn't really care if your opponent picks stuff up. Not quite as much, at least. Because you're not playing for that long game, you just want strong buff stuff out there. So it's good. Okay, the Dancing Swords are good. Next up, Undertaker. This is a 1 mana cost 1/2. Whenever you summon a minion with Death Rattle, gain +1/+1. It is pretty much a secret keeper for Death Rattle. That's what this is. It's good. It's really good because there are so many good Death Rattle cards that are already being played, like Leper Gnomes. Just think about that for a second. And if you combine that with all the other cool cards that are being released with Naxxramas, it's just going to be an incredibly good turn 1 drop. And it's not a 1/1, it's a 1/2. So you could put it on par with a Argent Squire or something like that. And it's got a much more useful extra ability on it. I like it. I like it a lot, and I think it'll fit in a whole lot of decks. Maybe this is going to be what, let's say, pushes me to make an aggressive priest deck. We'll see. We'll see. Next up, Nerubian Egg. This is a 2-cost 0/2 that has a death rattle of summon a 4/4 Nerubian. It's good. It's incredibly good. It's kind of difficult in some ways that you have to kill it, because it can't actually attack. So you have to somehow use a spell on it, or somehow give it taunt, or something like that. Maybe give it attack, so it can actually move in there and kill itself on something to summon the 4/4. In a druid deck, this would work great. I was saying before, it would work well with Poison Seeds, or with Avenge, for instance, from the Paladin deck. There you go. That's Nerubian Egg. It's a rare. The other two that we looked at before were commons, and I think it's going to be used a whole lot. Next up, an epic, Shade of Naxxramas. This is a 3-cost 2/2. It's got stealth, and at the start of your turn, gain +1/+1. I hate this card. It's like a mini Gruul. At the start of your turn, gain +1/+1 every turn. That's crazy. I will, however, say I'm happy that there are more stealth minions coming into the game. Okay, I want stealth minions in the game. It's fun. It's really cool being able to, you know, get them out there and have them safe, at least for a little bit. It costs 3 for only a 2/2, so it's not that easy to keep alive, because after turn 3, a lot of classes start, let's just say, unlocking their AoE abilities. Now, for instance, for Priest, obviously that only happens on turn 5 or turn 4 if you've got your Soul Priest Circle of Healing combo. Warlocks turn 3, I suppose. Warriors could potentially kill it earlier on. There are lots of possibilities. But if this thing starts growing and keeps growing, it could be deadly. So I like it. No Death Rattle there. Okay, that's worth noting as well. Then, Baron Rivendare. 4 mana for a 1/7. This is a legendary. Your minions trigger their Death Rattles twice. Oh. Oh. That's so good. That's so good. What can I say? You would be a fool not to use this if you're playing a lot of Death Rattles. 4 for a 1/7 is already pretty decent. It is a legendary. It is a legendary card, so it might be a little bit more difficult to attain. It's gonna be the only one of its kind in your deck, so it'll be situationally important to you, situationally useful, but it's still really good. Think for a moment about combining Baron Rivendare with something like a Web Spinner. Okay, I could use any of the class cards as an example because so many of them synergize so well with this dude here. But let's take the Web Spinner as an example. You play a Tundra Rhino in one turn, you manage to keep it alive till the next. You got a lot of mana. Okay, let's say you got 6 to 8 mana, doesn't really matter. You can play the Web Spinner, play Baron Rivendare, charge the Web Spinner into something your opponent has, it dies, you draw 2 beast cards, maybe you draw another Web Spinner, maybe you draw a Buzzard. Okay, you play the Buzzard, you play another Web Spinner. I mean, that's a bit more mana now, but you get what I'm saying. And that'll just keep repeating over and over again. You'll be double Death Rattling. You could also use this with things like Leper Gnomes to do some terrible, terrible damage kind of early on. Infinite uses. You could use something like Avenge. Imagine it with a Dark Cultist, or just any Death Rattle. Having the Death Rattles trigger twice is so good. So, so good. And again, this will just be in all Death Rattle based decks, which will be all decks come Naxxramas. Really good, will be using it 10 out of 10. Next up, Loatheb. This is another legendary. He costs 5 mana for a 5/5, and the battle cry makes me want to cry. It is so ridiculously good. Enemy spells cost 5 more next turn. Everyone is going to play this. This is such a good card. Such a good card. Also, 5 mana. There are not many super useful, non-situational legendaries on 5 mana. This guy, I would say, is kind of on par with a Black Knight in how you use it. You know, it's going to work well against certain decks, but not that great against others. But at the same time, you get in 5/5 for 5 mana, which is really good. Really, really good. I will probably be using this in every single deck I set up just because I love what it could potentially do to Miracle Rogues or to Mages or to, well, pretty much any deck where you can actually predict what's going to come on a certain turn. I like the idea, but just think for a second about how crazy this would be in a Warlock Zoo deck. Just think about it. They play this on turn 5, they shut you down the next turn, you're not able to, well, do anything to their board. They force you to play minions and say you don't have a taunt. Think about that. Maybe you were saving a Holy Nova, a Flame Strike, a this, a that, doesn't really matter. They play their Loatheb, they shut you down, they just play even more minions, attack you. You can't do anything. It's scary. I guess it's also a little bit sad that you can't shut it down by silencing it or like returning it to your opponent's hand or whatever because it's a battle cry like Millhouse Mana Storm. You play it, it happens, it's done. Next turn, no spells are going to be casted. Scary. That's all I'm going to say. And I'm also so excited about using this. I just like having legendaries in my deck. I like playing them. It's a good feeling getting them out there. And this is a very strategic legendary. Very, very strategic. A lot of thought will go into when you play it. It's cool. It's also the one card out of all of these that I really want to hear your opinions on, more so than any of the others. Like, tell me what you think. Tell me how you would want to use this. Tell me if you think this is going to break the meta. Tell me if you think this is going to ruin the game. I want to hear it. And yes, Loatheb was officially the last card we're looking at. We're done. Finished. I want to hear from you guys what you think about the class cards, the neutrals, the legendaries, the lot of it. Are you switching classes up for Naxxramas because you think one of these specific classes works better with Death Rattle because you're more excited about a specific card. I personally am going back to Priest full on with a vengeance come Naxxramas. I think it's going to be a lot of fun messing around with some of the lesser used Priest cards. Setting up some combos with them and the Death Rattle minions. It's going to be fun. A lot of fun. So let me know what you think about all the cards, about the Curse of Naxxramas, everything that's been revealed thus far, and all the rest. Thanks for watching. Give it a like, share it, and do all that other good stuff. Most importantly though, happy waiting for Curse of Naxxramas. It's just a couple of days. Happy that.